Welcome to USA Football's Coach and Coordinator Podcast, where top football coaches from around the country share their stories, philosophies, concepts, and strategies to help you get better on and off the field. Now, here's your host, Keith Grabowski.
Hey, coaches, before we get going today, I just wanted to thank you for all you've been doing to support this podcast. And we have an incredible lineup coming up here. We have just about every major college conference represented. We have a ton of FBS coaches, Division II coaches, Division III coaches, some great high school football coaches coming on the podcast to share with you and help you grow professionally during this time. I really appreciate all of you asking your questions on Twitter. Please follow me at Coach K. Grabowski for our daily updates on our guests and your opportunity to ask questions. We will read them on the show and attribute those to you. So please contribute to the show as much as you can. I also want to talk to you a little bit about our football development model, which is something we've rolled out here at USA Football. And this is really for you to be able to help your youth football programs develop. It's about a long-term athlete development plan. It's something that comes off of the American development model, which is something that the USOC has put together. The idea is that we're able to teach skills in a progression starting at the youngest ages. We're also looking at the different game types we have, whether that's flag, which is non-contact, limited contact games like padded flag or tackle bar, and full contact, and the right progressions for contact teaching there as well. Be sure to check out all we do at footballdevelopment.com and check out what we're doing with the FDM, the football development model, at usafootball.com/FDM. usafootball.com. On today's podcast, we have the running backs coach at Mississippi State. He joined us last time when he was at Washington State, and that's Eric Mele. Coach, it's great to have you back here.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So, Coach, as I said, we had you on before, and we kind of handled your background and that kind of stuff, so we won't rehash that. We will link to that podcast for our listeners so they have it in the show notes, and they could go back and listen to that one as well. But what we've done for this one and what we've been doing kind of as things have grinded to the halt here, a lot of our listeners have been submitting questions. So we do have quite a few on running back play, especially as it's related to the air raid. Some of these guys know your background in special teams, so a few special teams questions for you. And then it appears that maybe there's a couple guys you know personally who have some questions in here too, and we'll get to those as well.
Yeah, it sounds good. And then the old podcast is good if you need to know where to go in Key West and map out Coach Leach's island tour. So that's always a must listen, you know.
Absolutely. That was a great conversation and some good information there. So yeah, we'll definitely have that for our listeners. So our first question, we'll just focus on some general running back things. So Scoop Reed is a coach out there who, I'll tell you what, I've never met Scoop Reed, but I think this is about the 6th podcast now that he's asked a few questions on. This guy is using this time to learn. So I've been happy that he's been submitting questions. I'm sure he's filling up a notebook right now. But Scoop wants to know, how much can a running back catching ability improve? I guess so in other words, when you get a guy who maybe comes in and he's been the guy maybe carrying the ball in high school 20, 30 times a game and now comes into an air raid system, what's the room for improvement and how much do you usually see those guys improve in catching the football?
Yeah, it's a good question because even in recruiting, sometimes it's hard to gauge how good a guy's hands are because you don't see him catch a lot of balls in high school. And like you said, they kind of handed a bunch to those guys, and you're hoping that he doesn't have just 2 bricks out there and kind of pinging off his chest type of deal. But look for a guy that's a good athlete and played other sports potentially. And I think it is something you can develop, and it's a skill you can develop. I mean, you don't want to be able to have a guy that fights the ball and that type of thing, but you can still train them to have good hands, to be able to catch the ball properly. So we have a pre-practice deal with the tennis ball machines, and they're out there shooting balls. They're catching 1 hand and 2 hands. The jugs is one we use again, same thing, kind of pre-practice deal. But the drill work throughout our practice plan, throw a ton of balls to the backs, obviously, and they're catching balls there, and then post-practice with the quarterbacks. So there's really, you go through a practice and you go through 2-3 days, if you're dropping balls and you're doing 5 push-ups on a drop, I mean, the guy's either going to be a really good receiver or he's going to be really jacked up, one or the other. So it usually works out pretty good. But, yeah, he can improve for sure. I mean, the guy who has a natural hands is better, but it's not really that big of an issue.
This one's just a follow-up from me. As you've looked at this and done this over the years, are there catches that are a little bit more difficult for these guys to work on, whether that's, catches like an out route or something, a flat route out of the backfield where they got to get their head around, or is it stuff up the sideline that, maybe the longer ball that they're not used to? Anything you've seen as far as stuff that maybe you have to work a little bit more on as you install the air raid?
Yeah, some of that would be the down the field shots, like on a wheel, be able to catch the ball over your outside shoulder, that type of thing, which is even difficult for some receivers that haven't done that as much, coming out of high school. But biggest thing is keeping those hands away from their body. That's always a big deal. And they catch that front half of the football and keep those hands out in front of them, their eyes kind of focused in on that ball. They'll have, as much opportunity as they can to catch the thing all the way through. Yeah, routes, even just a swing route at the backfield where the guy kind of turns upfield, the quarterback scrambles, something like that, where it's, again, just a further distance from the QB. That's when it becomes a little more of an issue for a guy. It's not as natural. Again, just got to get those hands out in front of him and just kind of focus in on it.
So, you guys are obviously a catch heavy with your running backs. I think your guy was he was the second guy the last year at Washington State in receptions. So they're going to get a lot of footballs. Same as when you talk to receiver coaches, right? They're looking at a lot of things like, how do we preserve legs? So for them working, just the top of a route or, break point into a catch, stuff like that. Do you look at any kind of drills that, I guess, shorten the length of the drill, but still keep the focus on the catch and the different angles?
Yeah, and that's, we'll go through like our quick game and routes on air drill. We're kind of running through, 3-step drop and then 5-step drop pass plays. So look at a bunch of catches in there. But when I'm working with just them, sometimes it's just stationary, honestly. I'll just kind of fire balls at them. And, student assistant, same thing. Just working on catching from different angles and, bad balls, over-the-shoulder balls, their arms fully extended, that type of thing. But, yeah, as much as you can save on their legs is good. One thing we do at practice, too, Coach Leach is always never we don't really condition at practice. There's not like a bunch of wind sprints at the end of practice. We're running from drill to drill. So it's full speed in between the whistles, and they get their work in that way. So you definitely still want to be conscious of their legs and make sure we're not overtaxing those guys.
The next question from Coach Reed was just in regard to, recruiting, right? You mentioned looking at other sports to see kind of skills guys have. Have you ever recruited a high school receiver with plans to convert him to a running back? Yeah,
kind of quasi, kind of do it everything type of guy, an athlete guy. Yeah, those guys are attractive for sure. When you watch them on film, if they play, both sides of the ball and they play some receiver and they're out there and lined up in receiver positions, as long as that guy's frame can hold some weight, just in regards to pass protection, he's going to have to do some of that, in our offense. And really, it's probably not as much as somebody would think. Hey, air raid, you got to pass block all the time. You don't. Coach Miller and I spend a lot of our game plan, time just talking about how we're going to get the back out and pass routes. We don't want them in there blocking people if we can prevent it. If we know who's blitzing, we know their top blitzes, their favorite guy, favorite blitzers, that type of thing. So, he's still got to be able to do it, though, when called upon. And he's going to be able to run in short yards and situations, that type of thing. So as long as there's enough on that frame to kind of, we don't want a real long, lanky guy. But, we had a guy, I guess last year we brought a guy in that was, a 5'11", 180-pound guy in high school that could probably play receiver. But, his shoulders were broad enough, and, right now he's probably about 200 pounds. So he's probably prototypical, kind of running back size at this point. So, yeah, it's something you would definitely not rule out for sure.
What is your big three of running back play?
Yeah, good question. I guess one thing is just not being tackled one for one. We kind of harp on that quite a bit. Making one guy miss or being able to break a tackle and finishing runs, finishing downfield on people, that type of thing. So drill a lot of that in practice, just kind of drills that make a lot of sense that they use in games, not a bunch of dance moves out there, but more efficient with their feet and get really good at being able to, stem a guy or whatever their best, quality is as a running back. We're going to try and maximize that as best we can. So making somebody miss and then avoiding negative plays, always falling forwards, and that kind of ties into, running behind your pads, that type of thing. A guy with a good lean. We don't want to get dropped in the backfield for a loss of yards, that type of thing. If we can minimize the negative yardage plays. If a bad run goes for 2 or 3 yards and a good one goes for 10, over the course of a game and the amount of reps, those numbers will be really efficient running the ball that way. So always falling forward and running behind those pads, like I said. And then the last one, probably just being pass protection, being a willing pass protector. And that's always where it starts. And again, in high school, you don't see as much pass protection from the back. So when you get to college, that's usually like the last piece that a guy, gets and is able to, execute at a high level at. So as long as he's courageous and he's willing to stick his face in there, we can work with that. So, we want that guy, beating the guy into the line of scrimmage and, being the aggressor or being the attacker. But if they can do that, then we're in business. So pass protection and, running behind the pads, falling forward, and obviously being able to break a tackle or make somebody miss are kind of the big two you're looking for.
So, Coach, moving on, kind of more of a question about practice. Coach Adam Wilson wanted to know just about, I guess, the differences in coaching the running back in the air raid practice plan, especially in that so much hinges on the passing game. How do things look different for him maybe than more of a traditional running back or traditional, I don't know what's traditional anymore because there's so many things, but I guess that the typical thing you see in how people structure it?
Yeah, we have to steal time for individual, practice for the RBs. That's definitely probably the biggest thing we have to kind of get figured out, going into a practice plan. During the pre-practice, we have a period there where we'll have, our blitz pickup and run checks and, plays that are kind of tweaks for that week. So that's a good time for us to work on, footwork and, technique and pass protection, those types of things. And then again, to practice, pat and goes to drill, pretty heavy for quarterbacks and receivers. And obviously our guys are going to have to catch some balls down the field over the shoulder, that type of thing. But I will steal a bunch of time out of that drill day to day to get some RB work in. So one day we won't go there at all, and we'll just work pass protection, kind of a progression with, some sleds and some bag work, that type of thing. And then another day we'll do inside run with the O-line. We'll get it in versus the defense one day, and then the O-line and us will get together and do it versus scouts one day too. So we'll kind of cut that period out. Even our quick game period, which is 3-step drop, we're in some of those plays and we're working some of those routes that were kind of a primary read. And then when we're not, we kind of just disappear from the drill there for about half that period. And then boom, we're out there. We're working footwork. We're working, same thing, pass routes, that type of stuff. So we're stealing our indie work. But those are a couple of things probably early on in practice. There's also a mesh period with the quarterbacks. We'll get that while the receivers and DBs are working a drill, O-line, D-line's working a drill, and we just get about 3 or 4 minutes where we get to, work those handoff mesh points and work any kind of nuance, screen work, that type of stuff with the QBs. And then, I'm kind of heavy on post-practice too. We'll have a ball security circuit for all of our ball carriers. There's kind of 3 drills we go through, 3 stations there. So there's a lot of us incorporated for all of them. I mean, I'll say, like I said, all the ball carriers are going to have a lot of overlap in the drills that we do, but really just kind of stealing some indie time here and there where you can.
I had a couple more questions on just coaching the running backs. And Ty Harden, he's a high school coach, Houston High School, I believe is the name of it, wanted to know when you have one of those freshman phenoms coming in, a guy who you think is going to help you right away, is there anything you're looking to do to maybe acclimate him quicker to an air raid type of offense if he hasn't come from that?
Yes, we had Max Borghi 2 years ago and plays a true freshman for us. Luckily we had a good veteran back, James Williams, who was kind of the incumbent guy coming in, but you could see just through some of the practices that Max was going to be able to make an impact for us. And then I'd say the biggest thing is understanding the playbook and the plays and then what we're wanting him to do in those plays, what we're expecting out of, his role in the offense. And when you have an older guy, even if it's going to get overtaken at some point, it's nice for that guy to kind of help bridge that gap. You put him in situations for him to be successful. You don't just throw him out there, game on the line, first snap, first game of the year, unless you feel like he went through practice and camp and he's just your absolute best guy, that type of thing. So I think you bring him along, you kind of set him up for success. And as long as he's got all the physical tools to play right away and he knows what he's doing, then there's nothing wrong with it for sure. One of the last pieces is probably that pass pro, and then situational stuff for those young guys too is something you got to maybe spend a little more time on, as well. Understand what the down and distance is, how many yards we need in this scenario. It'd be great to break a long run on a touchdown, from midfield on 4th and 1, but let's make sure we get that first down, first, most importantly. But So little things like that. But yeah, it's exciting to have a guy like that in your room for sure.
How about on the transition of something like this? When you have a guy who maybe is getting a lot of touches in a different offense in a different way, now transitioning to him to the air raid type of offense. A talented guy who maybe has been your downhill running back or whatever you might call it, now being the guy who's gonna get some run, but is also gonna have to become a threat in the passing game. What's the transition plan for something like that now as you approach, being at Mississippi State for year one?
Yeah, I know we got a guy that's led the SEC in rushing last year. So he was the first phone call I made when I got the job, and just being honest with Kylan, I just told him, hey, listen, man, we're not going to lead the SEC in rushing this year, but you're probably going to lead the SEC in all-purpose yards. And that's something that the NFL, obviously is starting to transition to a little bit. You see these air raid teams and concepts coaches all kind of spread out now. You got to do all three. You got to be able to catch the ball. You got to be able to pass pro, and obviously he can run it. So, yeah, big thing to understand why we do what we do. Why our offense works and how it can help those guys. And like I said, it's going to showcase all their abilities. But the biggest thing is we're going to run the light boxes. So we're not going to run you into a phone booth and bang your head against the 5 defensive linemen, that type of thing. And then when you're out in space, it's going to be a one-on-one, and it's up to you to make that guy miss or break that tackle and go make a play. So it's, we get a chance to talk to a running back about it. They get pretty excited, and it's something that they want to do. Now they're going to stay healthier too, just taking a little bit less shots, in those piles, that type of thing. And usually works out pretty well for us.
Well, I would think, becomes very appealing to be able to showcase abilities that you can be a 3-down back at the next level too. I would think that has to be very appealing. Right, exactly.
I mean, it used to be the old days too, right? They had a short yardage guy, and then they had a guy that come on the field on 3rd downs. And just like you said, nowadays, we're going to train you how to be a guy who can be out there for all 3 downs. So if you're the best player, and you're going to play, you're going to play all 3 downs out there, and we're going to give you those drills and then showcase your skills for the next level, so to see that, and then go out there and just perform and just execute the plays and have fun with it and do what you do.
So sticking just with the running backs and the passing game, had a question from Eddie Titus, who's from Pennsylvania, and wanted to know in your offense, how many routes do the running backs need to know, and do they play any role in setting the pass protection?
So they work hand in hand with the O-line. The O-line, and the O-line is really the one that's calling all the protections. Obviously, like we'll meet with the O-line for about 15 minutes on a game plan day. We introduce it just to make sure that we're all on the same page, speaking the same language, that type of thing. What are kind of we're looking for that week, so we all know what we're doing, and we communicate. Running backs have to communicate to the O-line, and the O-line does, vice versa. So there's a good bit of that, but really, he knows his job, and the O-line calls it. Then he knows what he does from there, and he executes. So that's really the biggest piece as far as the communication goes. The second part was, say it again for me there, Keith. Right, yeah. Yep. Now, so a bunch of it is it's just a lot of stuff out in the flat. There's a bunch of swings and kind of full speed swings or shoot route, some stuff that's fast motion. Good bit of that, and probably just their typical running back tree from there of running option routes, running angle routes, wheels, all that type of stuff, and then the empty package is something that we've depending on year to year we use, and that running back's out there. So now you're talking the whole menu's kind of available to them. They'll run a mesh route, they'll run they'll run an option in the middle of the field, they'll run a hook route, they'll run a seam, so they'll run the whole gamut. The better they are at running routes, and the more opportunities they'll have on the field to do it.
Coach Matheson from Vancouver, Washington, wanted to know if you could speak to the route adjustments in 6 as it relates to 2x2 and 3x1 sets with standard 2 versus 1 high safety looks and corner cushion loose or tight. So typical looks that you see, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so in a 2x2 look, just starting there, guys are running down kind of those landmarks that they're pretty much lined up on, So, quarterback looks out and sees press coverage, on an outside receiver. He may hang on that guy and look to win over the top with him. Then obviously that's when the safeties come into play, whether they're 2 high and 1 high, as far as, is that guy can get over the top of that route or not. But the inside guys are running down the hash marks. And when everybody gets to 10 yards on the inside, when those guys get to 10 yards, they got to make a decision. Are they going to go over the top, or are they're going to find a hole in the defense at that point? So if they find a hole, they're going to go ahead and sit in the hole. If not, they're going to just keep blowing the top off the coverage there. They're going to try and get over the top of whoever's defending them. And then the outside guys will actually fall out of their routes as well, a little bit deeper down the field based on the coverage. So it's not as much – we don't talk a ton of coverage. We talk more of, where's the grass, where's the space, and then – if the guy falls out over the top of you, that's when the guy falls out of your route. If the guy just keeps blowing over, a safety then it's in cover one, goes over the top of the X receiver, all of a sudden it's a cover two look now where they roll the coverage to him. Okay, fall out of your route. So it's a lot of, kind of on the run, seeing what the defense is giving them type of thing. So, the back in the 2x2 set, he's going to run an option route in the middle of the field. And this way, you have all the clear out from the four routes and kind of evenly spaced down the field, and he gets to just work the hole in between the hashes versus the linebacker, which is a great deal for us. That's one you'll see like Patriots will run that, and that's another throw. Even like a slot guy could be out of an empty formation, like Edelman goes out there and just works versus somebody, that type of thing. At a 3x1, same landmarks. So number 3 receiver on the inside is going to get to the opposite hash mark, and they're still stopping the same points or running. And the back is going to release to the flat on the side of all the 3 vertical routes are. So the coverage blows out over the top, tons of space for the back out in the flat. He's got pass protection, so he'll get out there a little bit late, but he usually times up just about right for him to be kind of wide open too. And he's out there, he gets it. We like that matchup too. So same landmarks there. But if there's one high safety, just as a rule of thumb, and especially for I would think in high school, tell those inside guys to run verticals. So they put the stress on the safety that way. The outside guys can drop their routes out, just as a base kind of install. And then versus 2 high safeties, just the opposite. Tell the outside guys to run the verticals, the inside guys to curl it up. And that way I think you'll have multiple options of guys being open.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of flip over here to special teams for a bit. Adam Wilson from Georgia wanted to know your philosophy on building a special teams culture.
Yeah, that's always huge. That's a big deal. Scheme is great, but there's got to be the buy-in from those guys. So I think it's getting them to play for each other and understanding how important those special teams plays are, and then give them something to hang on to. So obviously, to get a little bit of success early is always helpful, and the guys can kind of do stuff to go out there on a a return team or go out there and try and get a block, that type of thing. But we had a deal, 2016. I think we scored 5 touchdowns that year. And it was, kind of like a special forces team. Everybody was kind of a different unit. And guys were fired up to go out there and make a play. But it really just kind of trying to tie into that, the military, like the brotherhood and, the camaraderie, that type of thing. So I think you got to find something that brings them all together. And then obviously, show them all those, there's all kinds of stats out there on special teams about, if you block a punt, it's an 80+% chance of winning the game. All those types of things that make them realize how important that other side of it is. So and tell some of the running backs too, for that matter, tie that in. Is got to play on special teams. There's not many guys go to the NFL unless you're a first-round draft pick. It's not going to be on a special team. So got to pitch in, got to help each other out, and that's going to help you get the win at the end of the day.
We also want to know about tips on a productive kick return unit. I mean, it's obviously kickoff, kick return, endangered species right now, as we've seen these alternative leagues kind of take it out of it or alter it. But I still think it's a beautiful play. So tips on a productive KOR unit.
Yeah, and I tell you what, go back and look at the numbers. Our guy Matt Brock, even last year and going forward, we want to return any ball we can, man. It's an opportunity for us on offense on that unit. And biggest tip there is, you got to block, and block some more. I mean, that's a long play. It's a long play for the kick return team, but really the angles and the leverage you have on guys for those blocks and being able to understand where is that guy going to go, where's the return going, and then where am I going to go to make sure this guy doesn't get there. To get a fight. Fight pressure on pressure, take good angles, make sure you're making the guy run around you, not, across your face, just cardinal sin rules, on kick return unit, that type of thing. But it's a long play. It's a long play, so you just got to make sure you have great technique and you finish, until until that guy's, running to the end zone on the other side of the field. But, I mean, kickoff too, same thing. I mean, just hair on fire stuff. And now with these new rules, it's, like you said, I mean, some of the teams across the country, I mean, just fair catches, and we're talking 10, 15, 20 returns in a season, that's crazy. It used to be 4 or 5 per game type of thing. And the kickers are getting better. I'll say that too. Kickers can put balls up in the air, and they can kick touchbacks. So the XFL obviously rolled out their new deal, which was interesting to see too.
What did you think of that? I'm still, I'm disappointed they ended because, of course, there's no sports on TV right now. But I did think there were some interesting things there. That being one, I didn't know really how I felt about it. I mean, I still love the traditional play, but, the thing I did probably think of as an idea is I think too many JV level and freshman level now, they're allowed to opt out of kicking if both coaches don't agree. But to me, something like this, if you still wanted to think about how you might develop kids to play this full play later, I see that as something that's not maybe not a bad developmental tool, but I don't know if I'd go to it full time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how you draw up any type of scheme whatsoever on that play. It's just kind of it's man-on-man blocking right there at the point of attack, and I think then the returner's just trying to find a crease there. We can kind of hit the thing. So I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to keep it, I mean, yeah, you can keep the play in that way, but I'm kind of with you that it's not. I'm a little more fan of the traditional kickoff return. Like if you don't want to have the kickoff return, then don't have it. That's just what it's in. They keep trying to phase it out every year, but I guess it's one way to keep the play. But yeah, to me, it's not a lot of there's not a lot of schematics involved there, and it's just kind of I think the return won, right? And however many weeks that thing went off, but I don't know. I'm kind of mixed too on that.
Yeah, I think I saw one time a trap scheme or something like that, but yeah, very, very limited in what you can do as far as scheming.
Mm-hmm.
So Trevor Suffall is a coach from Bixby High School in Oklahoma. Wanted to know your advice for a coach who is new to coaching the running backs position.
Yeah, good question. It's just basically, I would say just, biggest thing is drill what your running backs are going to do in a game. I think a lot of times guys get pretty excited and they want to do a bunch of different stuff. I think the biggest thing is being efficient with the time that you have and really preparing them for what they would do in the game. So just for example, I mean, you don't need a drill with, 15 cones set up and a guy, running in circles and doing cartwheels and, hopping over cones and all that kind of stuff. Just let's go ahead and set up a couple of cones and make sure the guy's, running with a good pad level and he's on the balls with his feet and his knees, he's picking his knees up and, a sharp cut and he's finishing on coach on the bag and he's, if he's a spin guy, it's a spin on contact and we'll get really good at that move. Or if he's just a jump cut guy and that's kind of his best move, let's really hone that move and make him really good at that, or stiff arm or whatever it may be. But I think it's more just being efficient and really just honing in what the best skills that running back has, and then getting really good at that, and then not playing too much outside of what their skill set is. If the guy's a downhill guy, then coach him up to get the ball and limited amount of moves and get his pads down and get rolling. So whatever kind of skill set they had, just I kind of tailor it to them and don't try and do too much. Just get really efficient in what they can do within the confines of the offense.
I think you'd probably agree with this, that if you're running a drill, you should be able to take video of that drill and then right after it put an example of where that skill or technique is being applied in the game.
Absolutely. No, that's 100%. And that's a good way to even describe it. The question you just asked, if it doesn't fit into the course of that 60 minutes on game day, then you probably don't want to be practicing that at all, So it's, practice clip and then a game clip and be able to coach the guy in the points that will make it a better result. We do one like a grab grass drill where the guy, a lot of guys will kind of touch the cone on the ground, but I'm making sure that these guys are literally almost falling down and putting their hand down on the ground. I got some good clips from the last couple of years of guys literally, getting tripped up and putting their hand on the ground and saving themselves, picking themselves up and then taking off for a touchdown. So it's a drill you got to practice like you would in a game. It's not, bend down on your knees and touch the ground. It's I'm falling down. And I got to, hold myself up like in a tripod and then kind of, accelerate out of it. So, just be efficient with those drills.
So, Coach, imagining this next guy, you probably know he's the offensive analyst at the University of Nevada, Brett Bartolone, and his question, this is the last question of the day, too. So, how many calf raises have you knocked out today?
That's a fantastic question from Brett. I mean, it's Brett's a workout warrior himself. You know, to me, it's you hit over 40. You know, I got 4 daughters at home. It's you had a limited amount of time in the gym, so it's really specific. I'm a big calf guy, big biceps and triceps, and some chest here or there. But that's about it. And I got the dad bod rocking. Looks like I still throw some weight around, but not very functional, but very, very aesthetically pleasing on the beach for an old guy like me.
There you go. That's what's important, right?
Yep.
Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time here, and certainly best of luck to you and the Bulldogs as you get going in 2020. As I mentioned, I have a daughter who's going to be a Mississippi State Bulldog, so definitely going to be watching you guys.
I love it. Hail State.
Coaches, again, I want to remind you of what we're doing with the football development model. Please push this down to your youth coaches. I think this is a great way for you to get some organization and structure beyond what you've already done. Check it out, all of our program development for youth football at fdm.usafootball.com. Again, check out our systems for blocking, tackling, and defeating blocks at footballdevelopment.com. If you register with your email, you get your choice of 3 free videos. There's some great things in there. I think things that as you get going again, you can get into the summer and maybe make up on some things that you might have lost if you had a spring ball, if you had time here in the spring to work on football. Some great drills for all those phases of contact. If you're enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes or your platform and give us a 5-star rate. If you have a minute, write a review. We really appreciate it, and we will read your review on our highlight show that we do at the end of the week.